In this video, we're going to be looking at how to use the Deepwardly Planner week to week and day to day. So we'll be looking at all of the different elements that are part of the planner as they're listed on pages 25 and 26. But like I did in the last video, I'm going to be offering a sample filling out of these pages. I found that as I used lots of different journals that I got off the internet, many of them didn't give any clarity or sense of how to best utilize the daily pages and the weekly pages, even the review pages. So I think by providing some examples, it's really going to help you to hone in on what each of these parts is offering you. So I really hope the examples are helpful to you. So at the beginning of each month, you'll be invited to preload the month. That's simply a language that means to set the stage for the month, to prepare yourself mentally, emotionally, spiritually for your desires that particular month. So you'll just take some time, either in prayer or in meditation and reflection, to answer some reflection questions. For example, how do you feel at the beginning of this new month? Feelings were extremely important to Ignatius of Loyola, so you'll take time to write all of the feeling words down here. And remember, if you're not very in touch with your feelings, there is a feeling word list in the appendices in the back of the Deepwardly Planner. Then you'll be asked to answer the question, what will progress look like as I imagine finishing the first month of the Deepwardly Planner? So for example, the example we've been using so far has been the example of growing in self-care. Well, maybe what progress would look like would be that I'm taking time every day for self-care. Maybe I'm even more specific and say every day I'll take 1 hour just for myself. But being specific about what that progress and growth will look like is important. Then you'll be invited to reflect on what is the biggest challenge, or what are the biggest challenges that you foresee in the upcoming month. Well, maybe as we use this example of self-care, maybe the biggest challenge is busyness or work. Whatever it might be, take time to really be mindful of the challenges that you can foresee as you grow into your heart's deepest desires. And then lastly, you'll be invited to reflect on some additional things that are floating around in your heart. In addition to growing in your 3 primary desires this month, I'm also looking forward to maybe there's a trip that you have planned. Maybe there's a new project at work. This is just an opportunity to share. And if you're doing this during prayer time, to really be sharing all of this with God, to take some time to share with God things that you're looking forward to in the upcoming month. All of this will help to preload your heart's deepest, most authentic desires for the upcoming month. In addition to preloading your month, you'll be invited every week at the beginning of the week to preload your week. And so that begins with just a couple of reflection questions. First of all, it goes back to feelings. How are you feeling at the beginning of the new week? Ignatius of Loyola, once again, felt like feelings were unbelievably important. They're where you and I meet the divine. We also know from psychology that being in touch with our feelings, our affective movements, is a tremendous part of self-growth. It's a necessary part of self-growth. So you'll be invited to pay attention to how you're feeling at the beginning of the new week. And then as part of preloading, you'll also be invited to ask the question, or answer the question, what are the primary intentional steps that you'll focus on this week as you move toward living your 3 deepest desires? So here's a place to go back to the intentional step pages you filled out, where you listed a lot of different intentional steps for each of your 3 deepest desires. Pull from those lists and mark down intentional steps that you really want to focus on that particular week. So for example, for my self-care, I put down a number of different things: art and music, exercise, time outside. Well, maybe I'm looking at the weather for the upcoming week and I see that it's going to be really beautiful. And so I put down that my primary intentional step for that week will be to spend time outside. Or to cycle outside. So to list these specific intentional steps, here you might just be pulling 6 or 8 or 10 of what could have been 30 different intentional steps that were part of your desires. But put those down as a focus for the upcoming week. Then at the end of the week, you're going to return to this page to do a week review. And that will include offering yourself a score each day. So each day when you finish the day's planner, you'll mark down your score, and I'll show you that when we get to that page. So you will have filled in some different scores here for each day. Maybe one day you gave yourself a 7 out of 10. Another day maybe you gave yourself a 8 out of 10. Whatever it might have been, and then you'll figure up the average for the week. This is not a type of grading yourself so you can beat yourself up about not being good enough. Remember, that's not what this planner is about. But it is a way to track progress in growing in authenticity. It's really important to recognize that just your desire to grow in authenticity is already a tremendous score. So my hope and prayer would be that you'll give yourselves at least a 5 every single day, even if you don't feel like you grew at all or if you missed all of your intentional steps. Give yourself some grace just for the fact that you're being intentional and mindful about using this planner and you desire to grow in authenticity. And then I offer a review question. What are the most meaningful insights in your relationship with God, self, others, or creation this past week? And how will you respond? In a sense, how will you respond next week? This is a great place to put down what it is that you learned throughout the week. As you read in the planner, the unreflected life isn't worth living. So I really encourage you to take time to come back to this page at the end of each week to be mindful of how you've been growing, what you've been learning about God, yourself, others, or all of creation, and how you desire to respond. Each day of the planner offers 2 pages. The left page is focused more on the details of the day. The right page offers a quote from Ignatius, some reflection questions, and a place to do some journaling. So let's look real quick at some examples of these pages and how to use them. I love to use my planner as the beginning of my personal prayer time. It's a great way to start the day. I like to begin by filling out my ideal day. How do I see my day unfolding and flowing? What are the things that are going to be a part of that day? And in fact, right up here, there's a place to put down what the date is. Maybe it's June the 5th, 2023. Then I fill out my day, and then every single day, you're going to list the 1, 2, or 3 desires that you're focusing on this quarter. I know at first that might sound a bit repetitive where every day you're writing them down, but there's something really important about us taking the time to write and rewrite them, to really keep them at the forefront of our minds and hearts. So you remember we've been using the example of self-care. I went ahead and threw down a couple of additional ones. After you list your 3 desires, then you'll list 1, 2, or 3 intentional steps that might be part of living into that desire that particular day. So for example, I'm hoping maybe to get a bicycle ride in as part of my self-care. And so today I hope to get a bicycle ride in. Tomorrow that may not be the case, but today, yeah, I can get that in. Maybe that's the only aspect of self-care that I can foresee fitting into my schedule that day. But maybe around mindfulness, I can see doing 15 minutes of yoga. And maybe I'll also do some breathing exercises at some point during the day. And then when it comes to desiring a new relationship with food, maybe the intentional step for that day would be to thank God before each meal. And maybe another one that I would do would be to eat healthy that day. As you live into those intentional steps, you're invited to check them off. And there's a key down here that if you complete something on any given day, put an X there. If you partially completed it, put a slanted line. And if you didn't complete it and you want to move it to another day later in the week or in the month, simply put an arrow next to it. There's also a place, as you can see here, to add your to-dos for the day. These are to-dos that don't have anything to do with your desires and your intentional steps. They're just other things that you want to get done that day. Then at the very bottom of the left page, each day there will be a slight prompt. They're different for every single day for all 90 days of the planner. This particular prompt was, today I'm most thankful for, and it's a place to just write down some things that you're thankful for. On the right-hand page of each day, you'll find a quote from Ignatius of Loyola at the top of the page. You'll find a reflection question or two that you might want to use for your meditation time or your prayer time. You don't have to use the question, but some days you might find the prompt to be really meaningful, and all of the questions are based on the quote from Ignatius. If you're not going to use the prompt, then feel free to use the journaling page for anything else that you want to write down. At the very bottom of the page, you'll notice that there's the end of the day score. Remember, on the weekly review page, there's a place to write down each of those scores. And in fact, once you have recorded that progress score on the weekly review, you can check off this box to note that you've actually filled in the daily score on that weekly review sheet. Once again, this is not about beating ourselves up for our failings, but rather it's about celebrating how we're living into our heart's deepest, most authentic desires. I hope those examples were unbelievably helpful and clarifying about how to use this planner. So many of the planners that I tested out and used did not offer a clarity about how to fill out various parts, and so I really hope that was helpful. These pages focused on preloading each month and preloading and reviewing each week are so important that I recommend dedicating a second ribbon to those pages so that it's easy at the end of each week to go back and review and to then prepare for living in authenticity the next week. I recommend that your third ribbon be used for just the day-to-day journal itself, that as you move through each day, it'll be easy to flip back and forth to it. I put my journal in a prominent place in my spiritual direction office, and I refer back to it multiple times throughout the day, not only to look at the things that I need to do and to look at my schedule, but also to look at how I'm intentionally living into my heart's deepest, most authentic desires. So having that third ribbon can be really, really helpful. I hope that the Deepwardly Journal is a tremendous resource toward intentionality, mindfulness, and ultimately authenticity. And once again, if you have any questions or if you need some help, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I hope the journey these next 3 months is an unbelievable blessing, not only to you, but to everyone around you who's going to experience new light and love through your authenticity.